When my brother Alex went missing, even after they declared him dead, I knew deep down he was still out there. I could sense it, and I was right. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Reddit Stories video. Today, we're diving into some fascinating Reddit stories that I absolutely love. Each one is engaging, intriguing, and perfect for listening to while studying, relaxing, sleeping, or just want to watch kind of a scary video. Thanks for stopping by. I'm really glad you're here. Before we jump in, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. When my brother Alex went missing, even after they declared him dead, I knew deep down he was still out there. I could sense it, and I was right. Now, here I am, parked in my car at 3:15 a.m., near a desolate bus stop that looks like it hasn't seen a soul in ages, waiting for him. Despite the warnings I received, I'm writing this to distract myself from an overwhelming instinct to flee. The desperate need to escape from what I can only describe as a consuming void lurking beyond the tree line. 30 days ago, Alex was driving through a small town called Crestwood, a name I had never heard until the police called me, marking it as the last place he was seen before vanishing without a trace. I still don't know why he was there. It was way off the route to Springfield where he was supposed to be headed, but I guess that's another question I'll never get answered. They said he was dead. When the Crestwood police contacted me, they informed me that they found his car, that bright blue 2017 Honda Civic he cherished, crumpled against a tree on the roadside. If he had been inside when they found it, I might have been more inclined to accept their conclusion. The vehicle was mostly wrecked, yet the interior was spotless. No blood. His backpack and laptop were there, keys still in the ignition, locked from the inside. Everything was still in the car, everything except my brother. But the local authorities insisted he was gone, and despite my pleas for them to search for him, they flatly refused. No need, they said. So, I knew it was up to me to find him. I arrived late on my first trip to Crestwood. A delayed flight and a mix-up with my rental car meant I didn't reach the town until nearly 11 p.m. To make matters worse, I was lost. My GPS instructed me to take exit 12B, but I couldn't locate it. I made several U-turns and circled back multiple times, growing increasingly frustrated as I saw exits 12A, 12C, and then 13. It was as if exit 12B didn't even exist. And to heighten my anxiety, my GPS refused to provide an alternative route. According to the app, the only way into Crestwood was through an exit that seemed to be a figment of my imagination. After 3 more laps around the highway, I finally gave up and stopped at a rundown motel conveniently located near exit 12A. I asked the clerk for directions to the town, since I was at a complete loss. He looked worn, not just tired from a late shift, but utterly exhausted, barely glancing up from his newspaper as he mumbled, "It'll be back in the morning." "The exit?" I asked, sarcasm barely concealing my frayed nerves. "Or the town?" He shrugged, indifferent. I lost it then. With my head in my hands, I broke down sobbing at that grimy check-in desk. He was kind enough to ask if I was okay, and I found myself pouring out my story. Why I was there, how unhelpful the authorities had been, how I knew I had to search for him myself. After a brief silence, he quietly revealed that he had also lost someone. His sister had disappeared in Crestwood several years ago. Did they ever find her? I asked reflexively, already suspecting the answer given the weariness on his face. To my surprise, he nodded. He stared off into the distance for a long moment before whispering, "I wish they hadn't." He introduced himself as Mark and told me that my brother Alex was gone, that searching for him would lead to nothing good. When he couldn't convince me to turn back, he offered me a room for the night. As he handed me the key, he reluctantly mentioned that exit 12B would reappear at 3 a.m. but would vanish by 11 p.m. the following night. I assumed he was joking, that no road would magically materialize. I figured I'd try to sleep and then head to the next town for help. So, You can imagine my shock the next morning when, just as Mark had said, a solid exit appeared where the guardrail had been. I had found 12B. The worn gravel and chipped paint of the off-ramp suggested it had seen plenty of traffic. I followed the winding road through the trees, feeling a mix of confusion and relief as I finally reached Crestwood. That relief was short-lived. The police were even more unhelpful in person, insisting Alex was gone and urging me to move on. It didn't matter that he had only been missing a few days. It didn't matter that there was no body. I wasted hours at the station, changing nothing, convincing no one. The case was closed, they told me. As far as they were concerned, my brother was dead. Now, based on what I've discovered, I almost wish he was. That would have been kinder. As I continued my search, the longer I stayed, the more I realized that something was very off about Crestwood. Every house still standing was abandoned, slowly being reclaimed by wild grass and creeping vines. The sidewalks were deserted, and I only spotted 2 other cars during the hours I spent there. The few businesses that remained open had only a handful of customers, all of whom clearly wished I wasn't there. Everyone I asked told me the same thing. It was unsettling how their responses were so similar, almost rehearsed. They had never seen my brother before. There was nothing for me in their town, and I needed to leave. And then, with a hint of genuine sympathy, they expressed their condolences for my loss. Eventually, it was 10:45 p.m., and I still hadn't found a thing. The stores all closed at 10 p.m. Even those typically open 24 hours elsewhere were closed from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. I watched the town shut down, watched it empty of life. Frustrated, I pulled into one of the many vacant parking lots, staring at the shadowy expanse of trees where Alex's car had been found. The air felt stale, heavy with an unnerving silence. In that moment, as I sat in the dim light of the only gas station I had ever seen that only operated for 19 hours a day, I first sensed something was wrong. I could feel a presence lurking beyond my sight, waiting just beyond the trees, something dreadful. I realized then that Mark and the few locals I had encountered were right. I needed to get out. Unfortunately, I had that realization a moment too late. What happened next was the final straw of my terrible day, as I took one last glance into the trees, seeking a sign or an answer. A darkness unlike anything I had ever seen began to seep through them, swallowing everything in its path. It choked out the light from the stars, a curtain of nothingness, detectable only by the absence of everything it touched. It brought with it a stench of burnt flesh mixed with decaying fruit that suddenly flooded through my open windows. I found myself frozen as it approached. As it engulfed the nearby houses, I felt an overwhelming emptiness, one that threatened to suffocate me. Yet, at the same time, it felt right. An invitation into the embrace of nothingness, towards something ancient and insatiable. The encroaching darkness swallowed the faint glow of the gas station lights. It was only when I realized the blackness had begun to dim my headlights that I snapped back to reality. I hurriedly turned my car around, flooring it down the winding road out of town, grateful it was empty of police, reaching the on-ramp at 10:59. At first, I didn't understand what was happening, why the road looked faded. That's when I saw something metallic glimmering faintly in the distance. It didn't appear solid, as if it were not entirely there, and it took me a moment to recognize what it was: a guardrail. I swerved and slammed on the brakes just before impact, but with my speed nearing 90, physics and I were at odds about how to stop. I braced for an end I wondered if I would even feel, if my mind would even register it. But none came. Instead of the screech of metal, I was met with the furious honking of a driver I had cut off as I veered onto Route 95. I was back on the highway, the light from Mark's shabby motel visible in the distance. I took one last look at the spot where exit 12B had once existed, and then ceased to exist again. Not knowing what else to do, I returned to the motel, breathless, recounting every moment of my nightmare to Mark. He didn't appear fazed by my story, opting instead to stare into space. I realized then that the police were right. Alex truly was gone. He'll return. Well, part of him will, he finally told me, perhaps sensing the hopelessness on my face. 3:30 a.m., 30 days after he first disappeared at the bus stop on Main Street. Are you sure? That's where they always come back. He offered a sad smile before losing himself in his newspaper. That was weeks ago. This morning marked 30 days since Alex first vanished. I landed in Springfield and made the 6-hour drive to Crestwood, waiting anxiously for the exit to reappear. I thought about visiting Mark, but ultimately decided against it. He had asked me not to inform him if I chose to return. He didn't want the weight of my choices on his conscience. But now it's 3:29 a.m. and here I am, sitting at the dilapidated bus stop in the empty town of Crestwood, a place that has only recently returned to reality, staring into the last remnants of the fading darkness. I can see Alex in the distance now, pale in the weak moonlight, barefoot, untouched for someone missing for a month, emerging from the woods. I found him. Even from afar, I can sense something emanating from him, an emptiness, a hollow yearning, a desire for something far more valuable than mere flesh and blood. I should be rushing to embrace him. I should feel joy. Instead, I'm frozen, overwhelmed by a completely foreign emotion, one I've never felt in relation to my brother. Fear. No, not just fear. An all-consuming, suffocating dread. It's not just the familiar emptiness radiating from him, the same way it did from the beckoning void that nearly swallowed me last month. It's not even the way his skin appears too tight against his bones, or that he seems taller than I remember. No, it's that chilling, predatory smile on his face, one I haven't seen in all our years together. He moves with the same grace he always had, but in his eyes, I see only death. I realize, as I watch the embodiment of nothingness that wears my brother's flesh, that I have no idea what he truly wants, what he craves. In a way, I wish he hadn't returned. I should have listened to those who said he was lost, because he is. He is utterly devoid of everything that made him my brother. As I fight the urge to flee to my car, to escape Crestwood before whatever inhabits my brother's skin can reach me, I replay my last conversation with Mark in my mind. So, I had confirmed, he'll come back exactly 30 days after he went missing? He had nodded, unable to meet my gaze. But I must warn you, Jessica, if you thought it was bad when he disappeared. He paused, staring past me into the dark woods lining the highway. It will be 1,000 times worse when he returns. I had convinced myself that I was doing the right thing, that seeking to save my brother could never be a mistake. Oh God, he's closer now. I can't tell if he seeks to fill that void by dragging me back with him, or if the hunger is more primal, more literal. All I know is that the Alex who vanished, the one I lost, is not the same Alex standing before me now. I'm paralyzed, as if bound by his gaze. I need to share this while I still can. Maybe I made a mistake after all. That wraps up this bizarre Reddit story. It was definitely spooky and chilling, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the story and what you'd like to see next. Thank you so much for watching until the end. I really appreciate you sticking around. If you're still here, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. If you've made it this far, you're probably enjoying it. So why not thanks again for watching, and until next time, see you.